like a bell cut.
Hello and welcome back to the channel where once again it's time for another first impressions video, with today's game being another fighting game on the Wii in the form of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Smash Up, a game that was released to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Turtles, and the game saw release in September of 2009 in North America and Europe before coming out in Australia in October of 2009, and it also came out on the PlayStation 2. Once I turned the game on, it was actually quite interesting because it doesn't have an intro video, so to speak. What it does have, though, is a video explaining all the controls and how to play the game, which is actually quite novel. I don't think this happens too often, in all fairness, and it's fairly useful, to be fair. I watched the whole entire video, and it actually saved you reading the instruction manual in detail. One downside I will point out, though, is that it's not actual in-game footage, it's video footage of the game, so the quality isn't particularly high. Anyway, what I'll be doing is what I always do, going through about an hour or so of the game and then summarising my thoughts on how it looks, how it sounds, how it plays, what kind of content I think is on offer here, and whether it's a game that I'm going to return to play more of before I shove it a final grade. So once you hit the main menu, you'll see there are quite a lot of choices. We've got arcade mode, battle royal, online facilities, tournament, swap out, options, bonus content, trophy room, bonus games, practice, survival mode, and mission mode. It is worth pointing out, though, that obviously all of the online servers for this game have been disconnected. So once you hit the character selection screen, you will see you've got 7 characters to start with. You've got 4 turtles, Splinter, Casey and April. It's worth taking note that these are not based on the original TV series, as the front of the box may make you think. So they're based on the 2003 series and the 2007 film. Now, starting out with visuals, and my expectations weren't particularly very high, and that was because it was a 2009 game that came out on the Wii and the PS2. Now, take into account the PS3 had already been out for over 2 years at this point, so my thinking was that this is going to be a pretty low-budget game, and it's not going to look particularly good, whether it's on the Wii or the PS2. But to my surprise, I was completely wrong, because this has got really nice graphical presentation. It's got some fantastic comic strips within the arcade mode, which depict the stories, and they're actually really, really appealing. And this carries over into the in-game visuals as well, because it represents the later Turtles series really, really well. The characters look good, they're animated good, their moves look good, all the stages look really good, and they're actually really fitting for the environments that they're based on. So I was actually thoroughly surprised with this game visually. In fact, the only downside really in terms of visuals is just the fact that there's a lack of characters. There isn't that many characters to pick from, so there's not quite as much variety visually in that regard. Other than that, though, I genuinely think this game is a really decent looking game on the Wii. So moving on to the sound effects and music next, and I don't think I'm mistaken by saying this game has the voice actors from the 2000s TV series doing all the voice work within the arcade mode and the story, which is very good. It gives it that more authentic feel and presentation. It just makes it feel that little bit more immersive, which is always welcome in games that have got a lot of voice acting. In terms of the sound effects, I think they're all spot on, whether it's the hits, whether it's the grunts and the groans that the characters make. I think they all sound decent. I'd love to finish up by saying the music is fantastic as well, but I just feel it's a little bit generic. If it had been some of the music from the 80s TV series that was a little bit more memorable, that would have been better, but of course you'd have probably needed those characters within the game as well. Otherwise, it may have just seemed a little bit odd. In the end, we've just got some generic sort of rock tunes, which are neither terrible nor memorable. But what I'll do is give you a few examples so you can sample them for yourselves. So moving on to gameplay next, and we've got a simplistic pick up and play style fighting game here, which is probably to be expected when you consider it's a Turtles game, but that doesn't mean it's not necessarily satisfying to play as an adult. Your Turtles can sling together combos with their strong attacks and weak attacks, you can collect ninjutsu items to do magic, and you can jump off the wall and do jumping ball attacks and do throws and grabs as well. So there's actually a fair amount of moves. All the moves are different for each character as well, so there's actually a reasonable amount of variety. It doesn't get too boring when you're playing it. In fact, the gameplay really only has two really minor flaws in my opinion. Sometimes you'll do an attack and your opponent will all of a sudden jump behind you and you'll be facing the wrong direction. That can be a little bit irritating, but that's something that you have to deal with these sort of arena style fighting games. The other one is a little bit more niggling, because to jump on the game you press up on the D-pad or you press the jump button. Now for me, a fighting game like this just needs a jump button. Pressing up on the D-pad actually gets frustrating because I don't want to be pressing up to jump, and I don't expect to be pressing up to jump. On a fighting game like this, a jump button is much better, but having both is a strange one. It's like they almost couldn't decide what jump mechanism to put in the game, so they put both, and it is just a niggle. In fact, that's the biggest flaw in terms of gameplay. Other than that, it actually plays really well in all fairness. I haven't really got anything else negative to say because it's just simple pick up and play fun that pretty much anybody could play and do reasonably well at. Now moving on to content and lifespan, and if you've never played the game and you turn it on for the first time, you'd probably just think, oh well, it'll have an arcade mode and a versus mode, maybe a team battle mode, something like that, but it's actually got more, and that's the surprising thing, the amount of content within the game, because we've got an arcade mode with a story, which is actually good. You get a different ending for each character when you play through it. You've got a tournament mode, you've got a survival mode, which is 100 fights if you can get through that. You have also got a mission mode, and there's over 50 missions, I think, to play through here as well. So there's actually a lot to do, and there is a stack of unlockables as well, different costumes, different arenas. There are a few extra characters to unlock as well. The Wii version does have a few more characters than the PlayStation version as well, so there's a surprising amount of content here. Now there was one downside for me, because the game doesn't actually have that many characters. There are no Baxter Stockmans, Krang, Bebop, Rocksteady, and I think what would have been good is if you'd have been able to play as the characters from the 80s TV series, sort of like the Turtles from then. That would have been quite cool, in my opinion. I don't think you'd have had to put them in the story mode or anything, but I just think it would have been nice to have had them in there as extra selectable characters. And that really is the only downside for me in terms of content, because it has a surprising amount of content to it. So I feel its lifespan could potentially be really good. If you're a fan of Turtles and you like these style of fighting games, then you'd probably be sticking at this quite a while, because you'd want to unlock everything that the game had to offer. So like always, that leaves me with my two final questions. Is this a game I'm going to consider playing more of in the future, and what final grade am I going to shove it? In terms of whether this is a game that I'm going to revisit more, I don't think it's the kind of game that I would play religiously, but I probably will play it in spits and spurts, maybe now and again when I want something different. It's not your typical one-on-one fighter. Obviously it's your arena style fighter, and I'm not actually a fan of Smash Brothers, but I guess because this is Turtles and I've always liked the original Turtle series, it does have a little bit more of appeal to me, and there is actually a wide variety of things to do on it. In terms of a final grade, I am going to give Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Smash Up a very healthy B, because this game genuinely surprised me within my first hour and a half of playing it, with just the amount of things to do and the fact it's got a decent arcade mode with a story in it. It really did surprise me. So a B is what Turtles gets. It's actually one of the better games that we've looked at so far in the series. Not quite as good as perhaps the Final Fantasy Chocobo's Dungeon game and also Dragon Ball Revenge of King Piccolo, but a pretty decent game nonetheless. And I actually checked out all the reviews for this game afterwards, and it actually scored relatively well. On average it got around a 7 out of 10 when it was reviewed, so it was actually fairly well liked when it came out. But of course these are just my thoughts and my thoughts alone. If you played this game, if you agree with me that it's actually a pretty decent game, or if you think I'm completely mistaken and it's absolute garbage, let me know with a comment down below. Like always, I'll be back in the near future with another video. Goodbye for now.